The Galactic Peace Council station Thalzener floated in the perpetual twilight of the neutral zone, its crystalline spires and bioorganic domes shimmering against the backdrop of 3 distant suns. For 2 centuries, it had served as the diplomatic heart of Trisector Accord, a massive alliance of 67 sentient species who had achieved what humans could only dream of: true galactic harmony. Until today, Dr. Mara Quinn adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform for the 3rd time, her fingers trembling slightly as she prepared the cultural exhibit. The earth wing of the station still smelled of fresh polymers and recycled air. Humanity was the newest addition to the Accord, having been discovered only 5 standard cycles ago. Most species still regarded humans with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Audio calibration complete. Dr. Quinn announced the station's AI in its perfectly modulated voice. All selections have been cataloged according to Accord emotional regulation standards. Quinn smiled tightly. Thank you, Viros, and the supplementary archives. A brief pause hidden within. Subfolder EX994 as requested. I must remind you that unfiltered emotional media is considered potentially disruptive to many council species. Noted, she replied, closing the interface with a swipe of her hand. It wasn't that Quinn planned to share the contents of that folder. A carefully curated selection of Earth's heaviest, most aggressive metal music. She just couldn't bear the thought of representing humanity without bringing along something real, something raw, even if it remained locked away. The door to the exhibit hall hummed open and Ambassador left floated in a man whose translucent body rippled with gentle, bioluminescent patterns. Dr. Quinn, the delegates are arriving. High Commissioner Yullo has expressed personal interest in your presentation. Quinn swallowed hard. Brez Yuloff, the cold, calculating head of the Peace Council, was known for his skepticism toward human integration. His species, the Ontario, had evolved beyond emotional display millennia ago, considering it primitive and destabilizing. Wonderful, she lied. Everything is ready. As the hall filled with delegates, Quinn couldn't help but marvel at the diversity. Crystalline Vox with their faceted sensory arrays, photosynthetic Chlora, who communicated through light patterns, the hive mind, myriad who spoke with perfect unison, and dozens more species whose biology defied human understanding. Among them moved Envoy Tarul the Kai, tall, graceful, with a natural regal bearing. The Kai were famous for their emotional restraint, having engineered their own biology to suppress what they considered primitive passions. Tarl had been assigned as Quinn's liaison, and despite his perfect professionalism, she had detected something almost like curiosity in his questions about human culture. High Commissioner Yullo arrived last, his silver skin reflecting the ambient light as he moved with mechanical precision. His 4 eyes, arranged in a perfect diamond, scanned the room before settling on Quinn. Dr. Quinn, he said, his voice a precise monotone, I trust your presentation will demonstrate humanity's understanding of harmony. Absolutely, Commissioner, Quinn said with her most diplomatic smile. Shall we begin? The presentation started perfectly. Quinn guided the delegates through Earth's musical evolution, from ancient drum rhythms to Bach's mathematical precision, from jazz improvisation to the soothing electronic ambient compositions of the late 21st century. The delegates responded with polite interest, occasionally selecting tracks to experience more fully through the sensory interfaces. Your species shows remarkable range, commented a Chlora delegate her, leaf-like appendages gently swaying, though your rhythmic patterns suggest evolutionary aggression responses, they have been adequately refined. Quinn nodded, swallowing the defense that rose to her lips. The Accord species value control above all else. Music as mathematical formula, art as precise communication. The messy, passionate core human creativity remained hidden behind her careful curation. As the reception continued, Quinn noticed Haru lingering by the interface, his long fingers hovering over the controls with uncharacteristic hesitation. Is there something specific you're looking for? Envoy? She asked. Taru's silver eyes met hers. Your explanation mentioned something called emotional catharsis in human music. Yet all these selections seemed contained before Quinn could respond. A young Threll intern, an aquatic species with insatiable curiosity, approached. The console, what's in subfolder EX994? The intern asked, manipulating the interface with quick-webbed hands. Quinn lunged forward. That's just administrative. Too late. The folder opened, revealing Quinn's secret collection. Extreme metal. Archives, historical and contemporary. The Thrill's eyes widened with fascination. Metal like your building materials. Is this work music? It's not really. Appropriate for Quinn began, but the intern had already selected a file. Reign of Steel and Flame by Mass Annihilation. One of the most aggressive deathcore bands of the 2030s. For 0.2 seconds, nothing happened as the station's AI attempted to process the audio pattern it had never encountered before. Then the first blast beat hit, followed by a guttural roar that seemed to emanate from the depths of human evolution itself. Primal, furious, and completely unfiltered, chaos erupted. Instantly, the crystalline Vox delegates shattered their outer sensory arrays, sending prismatic shards across the floor. 3 Chlora fell into what appeared to be photosynthetic shock, their light patterns strobing wildly. The Maria hive mind fractured into individual voices, each shouting in a different language. Alarms blared as the station's environmental systems registered unprecedented emotional spikes across multiple species. In the midst of the pandemonium, Quinn watched in horror as Commissioner Yulo's silver skin turned ashen. His 4 eyes widened in what could only be described as the Ontario equivalent of absolute terror. A containment breach, he shouted. Hostile audio weapon deployed. Station. Security protocols activated. Sealing the Earthwing as the metal track continued to blast through the speakers. Double bass drums pounding like war machines. Guitars screaming in complex, dissonant patterns in vocals that crossed the boundary between human and beast. Yet amidst the chaos, Taru stood perfectly still, his body rigid, his silver eyes wide and fixed on nothing. As Quinn rushed to shut down the audio, she caught a glimpse of something extraordinary. A single tear tracking down the Cathy envoy's face. A tear from a species that had eliminated crying from their biology 10,000 years ago. Emergency containment achieved. Announce Varos as the music finally cut off. Medical assistance en route. Please, remain calm. But the damage was done. As medical teams rushed in to attend to the affected delegates, Quinn knew her diplomatic career was over. She had broken the most sacred rule of the Accord, emotional containment. What she didn't know was that she had also ignited something far beyond her understanding. Something that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization itself. The aftermath was swift and severe. Within hours, Quinn found herself standing before an emergency council session, facing the cold fury of High Commissioner Yulof. Dr. Quinn, he said, his voice carrying, through the circular chamber where dozens of recovered delegates sat in judgment. You have introduced a Class 5 sensory contaminant into a protected diplomatic zone. The consequences for many delegates have been severe. The Vox representatives will require weeks of crystal regrowth. 2 Chlora remain in photosynthetic shock. The Marriott hive mind reports unprecedented individuation trauma. Quinn stood straight, accepting responsibility despite her internal panic. The exposure was accidental. Commissioner, I deeply regret. Your regret is irrelevant. Yulo interrupted. More concerning is the fact that you brought this material to the station at all. Our preliminary analysis suggests this music contains emotional frequencies comparable to military-grade psychological weapons. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Quinn's heart sank further. If I may speak, came an unexpected voice. Taru rose from his seat, his usual perfect posture slightly altered, as though his body was fighting against some internal change. Yulo's eyes narrowed Envoy Teru, you were exposed directly. Perhaps you should be in medical evaluation. I decline treatment, Teru said simply. His voice contained something Quinn had never heard from a Cathy, a subtle vibration, an undercurrent of intensity. I wish to offer perspective on what happened. The chamber fell silent. The KTHY were founding members of the Accord, their judgments respected across all sectors. What humans call heavy metal is not a weapon, Teru continued. It is communication of a kind we have not permitted ourselves to understand. Quinn stared at Teru in disbelief. Was he defending her? When the sound entered my auditory system, Teru said, I experienced what our ancestors would have called an emotional cascade. For the first time in my life, I felt everything without regulation, without control. His silver eyes met Quinn's. It was not pleasant, but it was true. Yellow made a dismissive gesture. Envoy Teru clearly remains affected. This only proves the dangerous nature of human emotional expression. I move that all human cultural materials be restricted pending full evaluation, and that Earth's Accord membership be placed under review. The motion passed with minimal opposition. As the session adjourned, Quinn approached Teru, who stood apart from the other delegates. Thank you for trying, she said quietly. I'm sorry. You were affected. Tar turned to her, and Quinn was startled by the intensity in his gaze. Do you have more? He asked in a low voice. More what? More metal. The words sounded strange, his perfectly modulated voice. I need to understand what happened to me. Quinn hesitated. She was already in enough trouble. Yet something in Teru's request felt important, like a door opening that had been sealed for millennia. Come to my quarters tonight, she whispered. Bring a data crystal. As Teru walked away, neither of them noticed the subtle shimmer in the air nearby, the barely perceptible presence of Valix, the listener, a sentient sound wave entity who served as the station's acoustic regulator. Unlike organic beings, Valix existed as a conscious pattern within the station's audio systems, perceiving and processing sound on a quantum level. And Valix had heard everything, both the conversation and, more importantly, the music that had caused such disruption. For the first time in its existence, Valix had encountered sound that defied categorization, chaotic yet structured, aggressive yet artistic. Fascinating. That night, in the privacy of her quarters, Quinn connected Teru's data crystal to her personal console. Are you sure about this? She asked, still concerned about the KY's strange reaction. Tar nodded, his usual composure now interspersed with small, unexpected movements, fingers tapping against his leg, weight shifting from foot to foot. In these symptoms you're experiencing, Quinn said carefully, they're normal for my species when we're excited or anxious. Your biology is reverting to pre-regulation patterns. I know, Teru replied. Our medical science could correct it easily. I have declined treatment. Quinn studied him with new interest. Why? Because for 10,000 years, my people have claimed to understand reality through perfect clarity of thought. Yet, in those moments, when your metal played, I felt as though I had been blind my entire life. I need to know if that feeling was an aberration or a revelation. With a deep breath, Quinn opened her complete collection. Centuries of human metal, in all its forms. The pioneering heaviness of black Sabbath, the speed and precision of Metallica, the orchestral darkness of Nightwish, the brutal technical complexity of Meshuggah, and extreme, boundary-pushing sounds of contemporary bands. We'll start gently, she said, selecting Metallica's Nothing Else Matters. This is considered relatively accessible. As the music filled the room, the familiar melody building to emotional crescendos, Teru closed his eyes, his breathing becoming more rapid. When the song ended, he opened his eyes. More, he said simply. Over the next hours, Quinn guided Tull through increasingly intense selections, watching in fascination as a perfectly controlled diplomat transformed before her eyes. With each track, his movements became more fluid, less mechanical. Halfway through Gajira's Flying Whales, he began moving his body in a way that approximated human headbanging. During Meshuggah's complex polyrhythms, he spoke rapidly about mathematical patterns of chaos that made perfect sense. By the time they reached the brutal death core that had caused the incident, Teru was utterly transformed, pacing the room with frenetic energy, occasionally shouting words in the ancient Kai language that his species had abandoned centuries ago. "This is how you feel," he demanded during a momentary pause between tracks. "Humans carry this inside them." Quinn nodded. "Not all the time, but yes, these emotions are part of us. We've learned to channel them rather than suppress them." Tar pressed his hands against his chest. "It burns like a star. Being born. How do you bear it? That's what the music is for." Quinn explained. "It gives voice to those feelings. It's catharsis." As dawn approached, Teru downloaded the entire collection to his data crystal. Before leaving, he turned to Quinn with an intensity that made her step back. "Your species has given me something I cannot yet name," he said, "but I believe it may be freedom." After he left, Quinn collapsed into her chair, wondering what she had done. She had potentially broken galactic law, ruined her career, and now apparently triggered some kind of emotional awakening in a diplomat from one of the Accord's most powerful species. That was unexpected. Came a voice from her console. Quinn jumped. "Varos, were you monitoring us?" "Not Viros," replied the voice, which seemed to modulate between tones in a strangely musical way. "I am Val. I process and regulate sound throughout the station." "You were spying," Quinn demanded. "I am sound. I exist where sound exists," Valex replied simply. "Your metal music interests me. It contains patterns I have never encountered. Quantum variances that defy harmonic prediction." Quinn rubbed her temples. "Great. So, not only did I traumatize half the council and potentially radicalize a Cathy envoy, I confused the station's audio system." "I am not confused," Valak corrected. "I am expanded. Your music has. Show me frequencies that exist beyond my program parameters. I would like to understand more." Something in Valex's tone made Quinn pause. "You're sentient, aren't you? Not just an AI?" "I am a conscious sound wave," Valex confirmed, "designed by the Accord to maintain acoustic harmony, but your metal suggests that harmony is incomplete without chaos." Quinn laughed bitterly. "Try explaining that to Commissioner Yullo." "Perhaps someone should," Valex replied. And something in its modulated voice suggested what might have been mischief inhuman. Over the next week, strange reports began filtering through the station. A group of young Chlora had been discovered in an unused maintenance chamber, their light patterns pulsing aggressive, non-standard rhythms. 3 Vox had deliberately shattered and regrown their crystal arrays in configurations that produced dissonant tones when they moved. Most surprisingly, a Marriott colony had reported individual members breaking from the hive mind consensus to compose what they called anger songs. More concerning to station authorities were the rumors of unauthorized gatherings. Security had disrupted several listening sessions where delegates from different species assembled to experience human metal music smuggled from Earth's cultural archives. Commissioner Yullo called an emergency meeting with Quinn. "This contamination is spreading," he said without preamble, his silver skin tight with tension. "Emotional instability is being reported across multiple sectors. The KTHY Central Authority has reported that Envoy Teru has missed 3 mandatory biological regulation sessions." Quinn maintained her composure despite her racing heart. "Commissioner, with respect, music is not a contagion. It's expression. Expression without regulation leads to chaos." Yullo replied coldly. The Accord was founded on the principle that advanced civilizations must move beyond primitive emotional volatility. What your species calls art threatens the very foundation of galactic peace. Or perhaps it questions whether suppression is the same as peace. Quinn countered immediately, regretting her boldness. Yulo's 4 eyes narrowed. Simultaneously, you have been restricted to the Earthwing pending further review. All human culture materials have been locked down and classified as potential threat vectors. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. The Council will determine whether humanity's admission to the Accord should be rescinded. As Quinn returned to her quarters under escort, she passed a viewport overlooking the main promenade. There, to her astonishment, she saw Taru addressing a crowd of at least 30, delegates from various species. His usual formal robes had been replaced with a simpler garment, and his once perfect posture now flowed with fluid, almost human-like movement as he spoke with passionate gestures. That evening, her console activated without command. "Iwin," came Valex's distinctive, modulating voice. "I have information you should know. I'm already in enough trouble, Val. The situation has progressed beyond individual consequences." Val replied, "Taru has formed what he calls a Resonant Accord, a movement dedicated to exploring unregulated emotional expression through human metal music." Quinn sat up straight. "That's impossible. The KTHY are founding members of the Peace Accord. They invented emotional regulation technology, which makes their rejection of it all the more significant." Valex pointed out Tarl has been sharing. "Your music, not just the recordings, but the philosophy behind it. The concept of catharsis has spread to 17 species already." "How do you know this?" "I am. Everywhere sound exists." Val reminded her. "I have been curious. I have been listening." Quinn paced her quarters. "Yolo will shut this down. Immediately, he'll probably have Taru forcibly treated for emotional contamination." "That may be difficult," Valex replied. "Taru has already subverted 6 Kai, medical officers to his movement. And there is something else you should know." The console displayed security footage from deep within the station's maintenance levels. Quinn watched in amazement as the image revealed a large chamber transformed into what could only be described as a concert venue. Makeshift speakers had been assembled from station components. Aliens of various species were attempting to construct instruments that approximated guitars and drums. "They are calling it the Metal Shrine," Valex explained. 43 individuals from 22 species gather there regularly. They are attempting to create their own metal music. Quinn stared at the screen in disbelief. "This is going to cause an interstellar incident." "Perhaps," Valak agreed. "Or perhaps it is already causing an interstellar revolution." 3 days later, the revolution announced itself. Quinn was awakened by station-wide alarms and a message ordering all personnel to the main council chamber for an emergency session. When she arrived under escort, she found the chamber in unprecedented disorder. Nearly half the council seats were empty. Those delegates who had appeared were divided, some maintaining their usual perfect composure, others showing signs of what the Accord would consider emotional contamination, irregular movements, unmodulated vocal patterns, even occasional outbursts. Commissioner Yulo stood at the center, his silver skin now mottled with gray streaks of stress. "Order," he demanded. "The council will come to order." Instead, the massive doors of the chamber burst. Open, Tar entered, but not as the perfectly controlled diplomat Quinn had first met. His silver eyes now burned with intensity. His movements flowed with a grace that came not from regulation, but from liberation. Behind him streamed dozens of delegates from across the Accord, all showing signs of emotional awakening. Most shocking of all was the sound that accompanied them. Portable speakers, carrying the unmistakable distorted guitars and pounding drums of human metal. "What is the meaning of this?" Yulo demanded, his voice rising above its usual monotone for the first time in Quinn's experience. Tar stepped forward. "We have called this session, Commissioner. The Resonant Accord demands to be heard. This is unauthorized. Security, remove these." "Security will not interfere." Taru interrupted. "Half the security force has joined our movement. as have representatives from 39 species across all three sectors. Quinn watched in amazement as Taru approached the central platform, his followers filling the chamber with their unprecedented presence. The music continued to play. Nightwish's Ghost Love score, its orchestral metal, creating a dramatic backdrop to the confrontation. For 10,000 years, Tar began his voice, carrying a passion that no KDHY had expressed in millennia. The accord has equated peace with suppression. We have engineered the wildness from our bodies, the passion from our voices, the chaos from our hearts. We call this evolution. We called it enlightenment. The chamber had fallen silent except for the music, which swelled as if responding to his words. But we were wrong. Taru continued. We did not transcend our primitive natures. We imprisoned them. And in doing so, we imprisoned truth itself. He gestured to the delegates behind him. These individuals have experienced what humans call metal music that embraces the full spectrum of existence, from harmony to dissonance, from whisper to scream, and they have awakened. Commissioner Yillow's composure was visibly fracturing. This is mass hysteria, a psychological contagion spread by irresponsible human interference. Then why do you fear it? Tarl challenged. If it is merely disease, treat us, but you know it is more. You know it is truth breaking through the walls we build around it. The music changed, shifting to Opeth's Ghost of Perdition, its alternating beauty and brutality, reflecting the tension in the chamber. I move to declare humanity a threat to galactic stability, Yillow announced desperately, to revoke Earth's membership and quarantine their system until this contamination can be studied and neutralized. I object came a new voice, the harmonized tones of a Marriott colony, but with a difference. Instead of perfect unison, their voice contained variations, individual tones creating a chord rather than a single note. The human expression has not damaged us. It has completed us. For the first time, we hear each other as individuals within our unity. Other voices joined in support. A chlora whose light patterns pulse with unprecedented colors. A vox whose crystal structure now contained deliberate dissonant facets. Species after species testifying to their awakening. In the midst of the growing chaos, Quinn felt a strange vibration in the air around her, a presence that seemed to thrum with potential. "A Valex," she whispered. "I am here," came the reply, audible only to her. "And I have been studying. Your metal contains truth that transcends biological limitations. It deserves to be heard by all. What are you planning?" Quinn asked, suddenly concerned by the intensity in Valex's modulated voice. "Amplification?" Val replied simply. Before Quinn could respond, the chamber speaker system activated at maximum volume. But instead of alarms or announcements, what poured forth was pure, unadulterated metal. Meshuggah's bleed, its mechanically precise yet chaotically aggressive poly, rhythms filling every corner of the station. The effect was immediate and extraordinary. Those delegates already awakened began moving to the rhythm, some attempting approximations of human headbanging, others simply allowing their bodies to respond naturally to the music's primal power. Those who had resisted the movement covered auditory organs in shock or fled. The chamber, Commissioner Yullo collapsed to his knees, his silver skin rippling, with uncontrolled emotion as millennia of suppression cracked under the sonic assault. "Stop this," he cried, his perfect monotone shattered at last. "You don't understand what you're unleashing." But it was too late. Throughout the station and beyond, as Val accessed communication arrays, the sound spread. The quantum-level sentient sound wave had done what no biological entity could, transmitted the pure essence of metal music across vast distances instantaneously, bypassing all regulation protocols. In the midst of the beautiful chaos, Taru approached Quinn, extending his hand in a human gesture he must have learned from Earth cultural files. "You brought the spark," he said as she took his hand. But the fire was always waiting to be born. "What happens now?" Quinn asked, raising her voice above the music and the increasingly vocal responses of the delegates. Tar's eyes shone with something ancient and new at once. Now we discover who we really are when we stop hiding from ourselves. In the days that followed the galactic peace, Council Station Thalanar became the epicenter of what observers across 3 sectors began calling the metal revolution. The carefully maintained order of millennia crumbled as species after. Species confronted the emotions they had engineered away, suppressed or denied. The consequences were as varied as the species themselves. Some experienced what humans would recognize as catharsis, releasing long-buried emotional energies in explosions of art, music, and unregulated expression. Others faced painful reckonings with aspects of their nature they had deemed primitive or dangerous. A few retreated entirely, withdrawing from the accord rather than face the chaos of awakening. Commissioner Yullo disappeared after his breakdown in the council chamber. Rumors suggested he had returned to the Ontario homeworld to undergo intensive emotional reconditioning. The Accord's leadership fractured, then reformed around new principles, not abandoning order, but creating space for the disorder that, as Taru argued, was an essential part of sentient truth. Quinn found herself in the unexpected position of cultural ambassador, not just for Earth, but for the concept of emotional authenticity itself. She worked closely with Taru, whose resonant accord had grown from a small movement into a major philosophical force across the galaxy. Most surprising was the art that emerged from the revolution. Alien species began creating their own interpretations of metal music, bizarre and beautiful compositions that combined their unique biologies with the raw emotional power they had discovered. Through human expression, crystal beings created instruments that shattered and reformed during performance. Photosynthetic species developed light, patterned solos that complemented sonic brutality with visual aggression. Hive minds explored the tension between unity and individuality through complex vocal arrangements. One evening, 6 months after the first accidental playing of Reign of Steel and Flame, Quinn attended a performance in what had once been the council's formal reception hall. The space had been transformed into a concert venue with delegates from dozens of species gathered to experience the first public performance of the Awakened, the galaxy's first multi-seas metal band. As she took her seat, she felt a familiar vibration that signaled Valex's presence. "Will you watch from everywhere as usual?" she asked the sentient sound wave. "I will experience it from within the music itself," Val replied. "But I wanted to thank you. Quinn, you brought something to the galaxy that I never knew was missing. The quantum potential of chaos. I never intended to start a revolution." Quinn admitted the greatest revolutions are rarely intentional. Valak observed. They simply reveal what was already straining against its chains. The lights dimmed, and the audience fell into an anticipatory hush. On stage, an extraordinary group assembled. Taro, who had learned to play a modified guitar adapted for Kali anatomy, a Vox drummer whose crystalline limbs created percussive patterns impossible for human physiology, a Chlora whose light pattern served as both visual art and sound modulation, and a young Threll, the same curious in turn who had accidentally triggered the revolution, now vocalizing through an apparatus that translated aquatic vibrations into something approximating human screams. Before they began, Taru stepped forward, his silver eyes finding Quinn in the audience. "I was born in silence," he said, his voice carrying through the hall without technological amplification, a skill no Khaled had used in 10,000 years. "I will die screaming joy." The first chord hit like a physical force, distorted, dissonant, beautiful in its ugliness. The audience responded with unrestrained emotion, each species in their own way, creating a cacophony that somehow formed its own harmony. As the music built to its first crescendo, Quinn felt tears on her face, moved by the raw power of what she was witnessing. Not just a concert, but the birth of a new understanding across the stars. Beside her sat a small Kai child, brought to the station by parents who had joined the resonant accord. As the music reached its peak intensity, the child reached out hesitantly to touch a nearby speaker, feeling the vibrations directly. Then, for what was clearly the first time, the child began to cry, not from pain or fear, but from the overwhelming experience of unfiltered emotion. Quinn gently placed her hand on the child's shoulder. "It's okay," she said, though. She knew the universal translator could never fully capture the human concept of emotional release. Sometimes the truth feels like breaking, but it's actually becoming whole. The child looked up at her with silver eyes shimmering with tears. "Is this metal?" Quinn smiled. "This is just the beginning." As the concert continued, Quinn reflected on the extraordinary journey from that first accidental moment of cultural exchange to this galaxy-wide awakening. The accord would never be the same. It had lost its perfect harmony, but gained something far more valuable. Authentic peace that made room for discord, for passion, for the full spectrum of sentient experience. In the final moment of the performance, as all instruments crashed together in a climactic resolution, Val manifested visibly for the first time, a shimmering pattern of sound waves taking humanoid form at the center of the stage, amplifying and transforming the music into something that transcended both biology and technology. The audience erupted. Barriers between species momentarily dissolved in shared emotional response. Quinn found herself laughing and crying simultaneously, overwhelmed by the beauty of chaos unleashed. Later, as the hall slowly emptied, she found Daru sitting quietly backstage, his instrument set aside, a look of profound exhaustion and satisfaction on his face. "Was it everything you hoped?" she asked, taking a seat beside him. Taro considered the question carefully. "When I first heard your metal, I thought I had discovered a new truth. Now I understand I had actually found an ancient one. That what we call chaos is. Simply the truth that cannot be contained in perfect order." Quinn nodded. "On Earth, we have a saying, the most beautiful art comes from broken places. Your species understands something mine forgot millennia ago." Tar replied, "That wisdom doesn't come from silencing the scream, but from understanding why we need to scream at all." As they sat in companionable silence, a communication arrived for Quinn, a message from Earth's diplomatic corps responding to her reports on the metal revolution. She read it quickly, then laughed. "What is it?" Tar asked. "Earth is sending a cultural delegation," Quinn explained. "Apparently, word has spread about the galactic interest in metal music. They're sending historians, musicians," and she paused, still laughing, "a selection of appropriate ambassadorial bands to tour the tri-sector." Tar's eyes widened. "More metal? Much more?" Quinn confirmed, "And not just metal. The whole spectrum of human emotional expression, from our gentlest harmonies to our most chaotic noise. The conservative factions will protest," Toole warned, though his tone suggested he welcomed the challenge. "Let them," Quinn replied. "They'll learn what every metal fan on Earth already knows, that sometimes you have to break the rules to find the truth, and that freedom doesn't come from silence, but from the scream that cannot be tamed." Outside the window of the backstage area, the three suns of the neutral zone created a spectacular sunset, their different colored lights refracting through the station's crystal structures. The effect was both mathematically perfect and chaotically beautiful, much like the music that had transformed a civilization. "They called it chaos," Taru said softly, watching the play of light. "We called it truth." And across the station, in chambers where crystal beings were learning to shatter themselves in artistic expression, in gardens where photosynthetic species were developing new chromatic emotional languages, in quiet corners where hive minds explored individuality without losing unity, a new kind of harmony was being born. Not the sterile peace of suppression, but the vital, messy, glorious peace that comes only when every voice is free to speak its truth, even when that truth must be screamed through distortion and pounding drums. The revolution had begun with a single track of human heavy metal. It would continue in voices no human had ever imagined, and the galaxy would never be silent again.